And welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. It is World Rhino Day. We have a local story about an officer that he was frisked last week.
Here we go.
We're going to talk about that as well. A phone app for catching cheaters. However, there's some security issues. And then who doesn't like to complain about referees? So we'll get to that as well. But before we get to any of that today, as Mark checks his phone, it's almost like the people who have to slap, like when players come out of the locker room, they have to slap the top of the, and you're like, why didn't I? That's almost like you checking your phone when I'm about to introduce you. How are you feeling today?
I was better until I was just reprimanded.
I'm saying it's an unusual time to look, because you know I'm about to ask you how you're feeling, and you just kind of like, it's almost like you're trying to avoid the question.
Maybe I don't like all the attention.
Is that?
Did you ever think of that?
No, because I've known you now for I've known you now for a while, and I don't think that's what it is.
Whatever. I need to tell this little anecdote before we get started. There's a video that's going to be coming to NorthcentralPa.com about school bus driving, or something like that. And
sure. And
Carrie and Phoebe just went and did it this morning, and Carrie drove, I guess, a school bus.
Okay.
And you know, like whenever you're in an office place or whatever, and there's always the office humor, and especially the gender-related office humor, how, you know, we tell the women they're crazy and they tell men we're simple and stupid, and
sure,
all these things that go back and forth. And everyone is pretty much on board with all of it. And Carrie is too, except when it comes to jokes about women driving. Because she will be like, I'm a better driver than you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you say what you want about women driving, but I can drive.
Okay.
So the first thing I sent her a message this morning, and I said, drive like a man.
I'm sure that went over.
She's not back yet.
I'm sure that went over very well.
She didn't respond. I wonder why.
My girlfriend went to Temple, so she had to park in Philly, for 4 years. And so I'm not a bad parallel parker, but she just makes it look like I'm bashful. Like when I go to parallel park, I'm like, you know, I got it right, and kind of slow. And she's just like, boom, 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 and she's in. She puts me to shame. You
can tell people who lived in the city.
Yeah.
I lived in Baltimore for like 7 years. I lived in the outskirts, but I was always in the city. And you can tell people who have lived in the city, who've driven in the city, who like you may know people here. I know people in their 50s who are educated, intelligent people who will tell you they can't parallel park, and they will keep driving around until they find a spot that they don't need to parallel park. In the city, you can't do that, or you would drive forever.
Well, the irony about living in the city is you're either the greatest parallel parker ever, or you're the worst driver ever because you don't have a car. There's no middle. There's no middle ground. So there's this great irony of like you're either amazing at it or you have no idea what you're doing. There's no middle ground.
I remember this is one of the times, because again, we've always talked about how our generation, you know, our parents were always smarter than us, and they were telling us how, you know, all the things of life, how to do.
Sure.
And we were in the city, because here, when you learn to drive, you are told on a red light to, well, this isn't the law, but this is how you're taught to drive, pull into the intersection. If you're trying to turn left and traffic's coming the other way, you turn into the intersection, so that when the light stops, you go through.
Yes.
We were in the city. In the city, you don't do that.
Okay.
Because you might pull into the intersection, and when the light turns, you can't go because you get gridlocked.
Yes.
And then you have cars trying to go the other way who are just laying on the horn, and you got 3 lanes who are just.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I told my dad, when I lived in Baltimore, I was in my young to mid 20s.
Okay.
And he was driving through the city going to an Oriole game.
Yep.
And I was like, do not pull into the intersection. And he's like, whoa. I was like, don't. And I explained to him why. And I said, you'll do it once. And when you're that idiot, and I did it once, and I have all these people honking at me, and you're just praying for like lights to turn. But especially like 5 o'clock in the city, sometimes lights turn and nobody can move, or you move a car length. It can be a mess.
Right.
So that was one of the first times in life I got to tell my dad, and like, listen, Dad, you never grew up in a city. You've never driven in a city. I have. You need to listen to me now. And I felt very proud of myself.
There you go. The last thing about parallel parking, and then we'll shut up about it. I took my driver's test in Wellsboro, and it's the first thing that
I was going to say, was it on a horse? How do you do that?
But the first thing they have you do is parallel park. And if you hit a cone, like your test is pretty much over. Like you're pretty much done. And I've always, the irony of like in the northern tier, that the first thing you have to do in your driver's test is parallel park. And if you can't do it, then you're clearly not suited to be on the roads in the northern tier. I always thought that was kind of like a little funny quip.
That is interesting.
It was good. Today is World Rhino Day. What do you know about rhinos?
I know that it's World Rhino Day because you told me.
Yeah.
I will say this: rhinos come off when you're a little kid.
Yeah.
The big, like grayish African elephants, and I know that rhinos?
They're in India. They live in
Asia and Africa. Yes. The two that are similar are rhinos and hippos. Mm-hmm. And as a little kid, because of the pointy, you think rhinos are these big, mean, fierce. Hippos kill more people than any. They are vicious.
Yeah.
And I think rhinos are kind of docile.
So the thing with hippos is it's not so much that they attack more often than anything else. Their teeth, like they're so big that if it's punctured, they can't stop the bleeding.
Ah.
Yes.
Okay.
So what happens? So when you actually get chomped on by a hippo, it is significantly more life-threatening than when you get chomped on by
everything else,
something else, because it'd be like getting hit with something.
They're very fast in the water too.
Yes,
they're like this big oafy thing, but they swim quickly.
Yeah, so that's why they're so deadly. Is when you actually do get bit by
one. I didn't know that, but I knew
you bleed out. Like it is what it is.
In Africa, more people are killed by hippos than like lions and tigers.
That's why, because they're too far away. Like
they can't get to first aid. Never knew that. See what you learn.
I know. So here's the global rhino population, just to give people. And by the way, there was a point in time. It's estimated. They believe that there was somewhere between 500,000 to 1 million rhinos at the beginning of the 20th century.
So 1900. Okay.
Yeah. So there's this idea in Africa and Asia. Now the world rhino population is estimated to be somewhere around 30,000. So
better than I was braced for worse, but still.
Yeah. So it's dropped significantly. The African rhinos, which are the ones most people know, they're the black rhino and the white rhino. They live in Africa. Just under 20,000 white rhinos are left. About 5,000 black rhinos are left. In Africa. To me, this is the craziest thing about a rhino. And I don't know most people. I did not know this until I just read it. The white rhino in Africa, when they are standing, like when they're just on all fours, they are 12 to 15 feet long. They are massive.
I mean, 5 yards.
Yes.
Wow.
Huge. Right?
Wow.
Kind of shocks you for a second because they're big.
Because they're not little. It's not like a dachshund that you get in the cartoons where the dog goes it's got like the roller skates in the middle to try to keep the belly up.
Yeah. Pretty incredible.
Well, how much does it have weight?
12 to 15 typically weighs around 5,000. When they're at full maturity, typically weighs around
2.5 tons.
Pounds. Yeah. Wow. Incredible.
I would have not guessed that.
The 12 to 15
I would have thought they were like horse size, except not that tall.
Yeah. Nope.
12 to 15 feet is mammoth.
Massive.
See what?
Huge.
Stick with us.
So one of the things that they're doing, and we'll end it with this, they're doing, the majority of rhinos in the wild do not have their horn attached to them because what they're doing now is conservationists and different people, they're darting them, and then when they're knocked out, they go over and cut their horn off so that way poachers no longer want them. So if you go around Africa right now and you see one in the wild, most of them actually don't have their horn because that's how proactive they're being in taking them off.
The last time I was in Africa cruising around the wild, I noticed a lot of that as well.
I'm sure.
I had heard of that program before, that they were to eliminate the poaching because people would slaughter the rhino, they would take the horn, and then they would leave the carcass.
Yeah. So one of the things that they're starting to do now, and I was telling you about this morning, they're starting to actually auction off this process as hunts. So the idea of it is you do everything you would in a typical African hunt. You track the rhino, you get into position, you shoot the rhino. The difference is you're shooting them with the dart, but they actually let the people shoot the tranquilizer. And then when it's knocked out, you go and you take your photo with it. And so it's everything's the same.
Do they keep the horn?
I don't know what they do with the horn. My guess is no. I'm guessing they don't keep the horn.
I don't know.
I don't know either. But yeah, it's like this growing conservationist effort. Very clever.
Yes, not as cool as shooting wild Texas
boars
from a helicopter.
I don't know. It might be. Once you're 50 yards away from a rhino, it might be as cool as that. You don't think so?
No.
I think there's a lot of things like this in the world. I think they're one of them that, like, until you see it in person in the wild, you just have no idea.
I would agree with that.
You can't ever really respect what it is until, like, it's there in front of you.
I would agree.
Because those measurements are almost double of what I would have expected.
I would agree. I would have said horse size, except not as tall.
Yeah, pretty incredible. Local story for today. A local officer gets frisked. You can find
this is one of the really important stories we're covering because you just need to know.
Yes. This is on NorthcentralPa.com by our own Brett Crossley. A woman allegedly grabs police officer by the genitals and rips his pants. A Zerb Township police officer said a woman grabbed his genitals with enough force to rip his pants, according to an affidavit of probable cause filed through Northumberland County Court. And before you go, I just want to read to you what the officer wrote. Sergeant Alan Guinea, I hope I'm saying that right. I stopped to make sure the handcuffs were double locked so they wouldn't tighten up on her wrists. While doing that, she grabbed my genitals so hard and squeezed to the point she ripped my pants.
Okay. I have never been a police officer. I'm not going to pretend to be, but I'm guessing the barracks, which is mostly male. I'm sure there are female officers, but I would think 90% male, 85% male, something like that. I'm guessing the barracks is a lot like a locker room. And I'm sure there is some sympathy because there's on-the-job danger, obviously, as a police officer, and they all relate to that.
Yes.
But I'm guessing the locker room humor towards this guy from getting his genitals squeezed by a criminal, I guess, someone he put in handcuffs. I'm guessing he's hearing about this on a regular basis.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm sure they have come up with nicknames, and I'm
sure they're having great fun with it.
Personally, I'd call him Frisk. I mean, that's what I would personally call him every time I saw him.
That would probably be almost one. He's like, I don't even know if I want to report this. I don't know.
I see what you're saying.
I probably have to, but I'm going to hear about this.
I mean, he kept it as simple as he possibly could.
Yes, he did.
He really did. The charge was a second-degree simple assault and resisting arrest, obviously, as you can agree with. Third-degree disorderly conduct as well. And there was also a summary charge of harassment for the lady as well.
Here's my other, maybe I've watched too many movies. I'm guessing this guy's a rookie cop.
I don't know. I mean,
there's no way he can be like the badass veteran. This doesn't happen to the badass cop. This happens to the kid who's been on the job for 10 days.
I don't know. I get your point. It would be
at least in the movies.
It would be interesting to read through these and have a cop on with us to just kind of hear like the thought process and what goes through your head. Because one of the things that I've always thought is like an individual cop making an arrest is not easy. Like I know that's like a very simplistic viewpoint, but like when you think about like trying to reprimand somebody or trying to cuff somebody or just the very basic subtle things, you are incredibly vulnerable at that point. Because you're so hyper focused on what you're trying to do, and your hands are busy, and you're trying. It's a complicated matter, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
And I have a friend. I mean, when we think about the police work, obviously, when we're like, we think of the things that are danger when they have their guns drawn and when they have to go in. And then we think of things like traffic stops is very boring. And I have a friend who was a retired cop, so he was a cop for however many years.
Yeah,
and he said, no matter how long you've been doing it, when you make a traffic stop, he's like, your heart's a little faster because you have no idea what you're going to get when you get to the window.
Yeah.
And so it's, It would be just that mystery. You know, the person's upset. You don't know who you're dealing with.
Sure.
And so I that's part of the respect of the job that they just have to deal. Because you'd think like, oh, you're just pulling people over, you write them a ticket. Oh, it's normal, because if they pull you over and they pull me over, then it's just, it's no big deal. But you pull over, I'm sure they get some interesting characters.
Sure. It's fun. I don't know.
Not that we're not interesting characters. I don't mean to downplay our interestingness.
I've always thought about this because when I was younger, I got pulled over for speeding, and I've been pulled over for speeding several times. However, one time I got pulled over and I had just gotten a job and I was about to have too many points on the license. And I just got this job and I'm like, I have to travel. Like, I'm going 30 miles to this job. Like, what am I going to? So I actually asked the officer, like, if I could get out of the car and talk to him, because I had friends in the car. So I wanted to just be able to here's the deal. Like, what can what can we do? Like, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to do what I need to do. So anyway, in the middle of it, I didn't think anything of it. Like, to me, like, why wouldn't I get out of the car and why wouldn't I talk to the officer? And in hindsight now, especially like in 2020, 2021, like, that officer was probably nervous when I said, do you mind if I get out of the car? Because I'm just like, I was fresh out of college.
Because you have an intimidating look.
But it's not, but like, to your point, you just don't know. Right. Like, why do I want to get out of the car? Plus, he's leaving 3 buddies in the car behind, and it's just him. And he's just, so now I'm asking if I can get out of the car and talk to him privately. What are the other 3 guys? So in the moment, it seemed very simple to me because I was young and naive and focused on myself. In hindsight, when I always think about that situation, I'm always impressed the officer, A, said yes, and B, like, he handled it and conducted himself the way he did, because it had to be nerve-wracking.
I like how you were young and naive. Now you're just older and naive.
I am. Now I'm older and naive.
Yeah.
I know before I was naive so that I was scared to do things. Now I'm naive where I know just enough that I act and do stupid things on it because I think I know what I'm doing. And maybe 10 years from now, I'll be old and wise enough where I don't act on stupid things. Maybe.
Don't hold your breath.
You don't think so?
No.
You're still doing that?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on this?
No, I'm good.
That's it? You're good for it.
No, speaking of old, I I'll tell you this, because I was thinking of this. And I think I might told you a story yesterday. My daughter needed a permission slip to sign up for to audition for the school musical. Yeah. And she said to me, just in case you care, the school musical is Clue. Okay. And I said, I will only fill out this permission slip if I'm allowed to fill it out as Mark Colonel Mustard Messina. Okay. And I know when you hear that, like, I was really proud of myself. Yeah. When you hear, like, I'm old, I have 3 kids, you're young, you have no kids, and you're thinking that I hope I never get that old, that I find that very amusing. But I'm here to tell you the day is coming.
You think so?
The dad jokes, sooner or later, they all hit.
I think I have an appreciation for them. It's just not like a belly laugh. Like,
well, I didn't like roll on the floor, but I was very proud of it.
Okay.
And
it's always funnier when it's your kid, though.
Well, I explained to my kids, there's a point, like, trying to embarrass and be obnoxious to your own kids is part of it's one of the few joys we have left in parenthood. So sure. It's like, you're stuck with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so someone turned in a Colonel Mustard. I wasn't allowed to sign it because it's like not the signature, but like in the printed part. Colonel Mustard.
See, the joke is your daughter and I are probably going to use it against you, and we're going to start putting that on everything.
What? How would that be used against me?
Mark Colonel Mustard Messina?
There are a few people that are more well-respected in this world.
If I just started walking in every morning and started calling you Mustard, you'll start to regret this.
No. Colonel.
No, Mustard.
Colonel.
You got to earn the Colonel. A stalkerware firm is leaking real-time screenshots of people's phones online. A lot of different conversations, ways to go with this, because obviously we can dive into like the whole world of cheating. Do you want to see your significant other's phone? Like, how do people maintain that? Because when I was going through college, like, that wasn't really a thing. Like, you didn't really have to look at someone's phone. Now what I've realized is with like younger friends, that's a big topic of conversation. Does he or she let you go through their phone? Like, how do you handle that? But before we dive into that, this company is called PC Tattletail. It markets itself for monitoring spouses without their consent and lets anyone view screenshots of infected devices by just visiting specific URLs. So the dumbed down version of that is you type in a website's address, and if you have put the app on your significant other's phone, when you log into that address, it snaps a screenshot from the camera so you can see where they are or what they're doing if they're holding the phone.
And what they're doing if they're holding the phone is usually this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what?
Probably. But it's the context clues, right?
The whole,
it's what's behind them, where are they, those types of things.
What's fascinating, and as you talked about it, these are the things. There are going to be more and more of these tracking things for parents and for, relationships.
Sure.
There's then going to be more and more countermeasures as to there will be apps that will be able to lie and send false signals of where you are. And like, it's going to be this whole espionage thing of just tracking people on their phones or not tracking people on their phones. But it's going to be interesting to see how these, this generation of kids, high school, college, they've had phones since they were 12 years old. And the etiquette of, do you check someone else's phone? Do you not check someone else's phone? Is it something that you just live with? Is it, because like it's like at basketball practice stuff, the kids just pile them and like their phone's there and they don't lay their phone down afraid that their buddy's going to get up and scroll. It's just, it's kind of like,
I'm probably going to get in, I don't think I'll get in trouble for this. However, when I
should perk up for this one.
Oh yeah. So when I first started dating my girlfriend, there was this idea, especially like when she was at Temple, all of her friends had this group chat where they shared their location 24/7.
Okay.
And so the whole aspect, like it's convenient, like if you're wondering who's available for lunch or who's at class, stuff like that. But really it was just like if someone goes missing
it's for
Philly,
safety. Right.
It was more for safety than anything else. Everything else was just like a convenience of it.
You have one of those in Blossburg in case anyone goes missing.
You joke, more people go missing in rural America than in cities.
Is that true?
That is true. However, the point I'm making is when we first started dating, she shared her location with me. And when I saw her later that day, I said, hey, did you mean to do this? And she's like, yeah. She's like, it's just so you know where I am. And I said, oh. And I was kind of like, I don't.
So you want to know where I am?
I was kind of like, I don't really I appreciate it. Like I respected the gesture. But I also wanted to make it clear to her that, like, I didn't need to know where she always was. Like, the thought had never even crossed my head. And the point I'm making is, like, there's a whole generation behind us that's the norm. Like, that's a real, like, starter off, like, with friends and with relationships is, do you share your do you share your location or don't you, right? Do you look at their phone or don't you? I'm very big, literally, I have never looked at my girlfriend's phone. I don't care to look at it.
Well,
I don't want to look at it. Like, it's, to me, like, that is her device and it's her thing. And like, I don't know.
I think too, beyond the technology, it goes to the psychology of the person. Because there are some people, the people who are jealous and possessive and who are obsessed with all of that. And they think that, they're going to keep their significant other in line because of their watchdog. But then there's other people that would drive them insane, where they're like, when my significant other leaves the house, if I have to worry, then I can't live like that.
But this is more, I guess this is more natural. Like if you or I decide to do that, I think that thought process is very clear.
That really takes our relationship to a new level.
I'm just saying, no, you missed the point that I'm saying. If you or I share our location with another person or a significant
okay, I get it. I thought you meant with each other. I was like,
if you or I do that,
shouldn't we talk about this first?
If you or I do that, there's more of a process. Like, we had to decide to do it. I think the younger generation, I think it's natural. Like, I don't even know if there's as much thought put into it as like it's a jealousy or it's a worry or I think for the younger generation, it's more just kind of like, hey, like, you're my friend and like, this is what I'm doing. And so if you ever need to find me, here I am. Or, hey, you're my girlfriend or boyfriend. And, you know, this is where I'm at. And I think there's a more natural inclination to do it that I think you and I just naturally don't have.
I would agree with that.
And so I do wonder, like with some of these apps, I mean, this one's creepy. This PC Tattletail, because just logging in and it just taking the picture and now you have it, that is bizarre. Really, really bizarre. So linking along with the story, basically, obviously, there's a ton of issues with this. Security threats, data leaks, all of these things now that they're trying to decide what's actually happening. The company's thing says, discover their secret online lives right from your phone or computer. So, I mean, it is, I don't know. I could never imagine doing it. And listen, like, I've been cheated on. I've been the cheater. I've been in long relationships, short relationships, like all the difference. I cannot imagine actually using that app or device.
It would be, if you felt like you needed it, it would be a tough way to live.
That's a good point.
Like,
I mean, if the
relationship seemed that,
if you feel like you need to use it, then you need to probably ask yourself the question, why are you in this relationship?
Correct.
Whether you're right or wrong, your mental state within the relationship, I don't want to say it's shot, but you clearly, your status now is fragile.
But here's the other thing, and this goes into, because we're psychologists here. One of the things I found about adulthood is that people, like, outside of the job, outside of the kids, there are groups of people who have not, like, they're just bored. They spend a lot of their time being bored. If they're not following their kids around and going to, you know, dance recitals and Little League games and stuff like that, they don't know how to pass the time. Right. So I'm sure there's a section of people who micromanaging and obsessing what their spouse is doing, where they're at, when they're going to, it gives them excitement because it gives them something to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've heard of the ones who their spouse had this on their phone and was asking them, like, why did you go home that way instead of this way?
Okay.
And guys, like, because I just wanted to drive. It was a nice day. I had the windows down and I just wanted to drive.
Right.
So I went that way and it took 5 extra minutes. But then there's that aspect when you show up at the door and, like, why did you do that? Right. So that it seems like a brutal way to live, but there's people that love that. They feel like they're a detective and it gives them, it's a game to play.
Yeah, no, I agree. Last thing for today. What's the deal with referees? You brought up, obviously, the Penn State game. Penn State had a huge win. But just, we've talked about other professions and other people in our examples. We've hinted at, like, referees, but we've never really talked about it. So I think we could talk about the Penn State game and kind of what happened. But then I think it would also be interesting to go into talking about just kind of like who would want to referee. I've said for years, you can't pay me enough to referee.
I would disagree with that. They could pay you enough.
I don't know if they could.
If there was a big check, if there were several.
It's a miserable job.
It is a miserable job. But this is the thing that I don't get. And some league did this. One of the, up and coming rival football leagues that lasted 2 weeks,
Okay.
Somebody did this. To me, this is the most obvious thing in the world. Why they don't have the replay booth official mic'd. Because they have all these people speculating, this is what I see, this is what, they have a referee official. Why not have the referee be like, okay, this is what I see, this is what I'm looking at, I don't see a clear control, he's out of bounds, because
you want to hear it?
Yes.
Why should you hear it?
Because it kills, it just, whatever the sport, well, and here we're talking about football, but they want people to think that everything's quality, and they want to think their officials are quality. And when you have a booth of Troy Aikman and Joe Buck who say, yep, they should overturn it. Yep, they should overturn it. They call in the retired referee who's a rules official who says, yep, they should clearly overturn it. And then the referee walks onto the field and says the call stands. it makes the NFL look like a joke. So at least you can have the person who's making the call explain why he's making the call. And then afterwards, we can decide whether he's worthless or not.
So this is a good analogy, but it's a bad analogy. I've always said the best restaurants I've typically ate at, you can see the kitchen. Like if you walk into like an Italian shop and you can see the kitchen, it's gonna be really good because they know
they're not hiding anything.
They know they're good and there's nothing to hide.
Yep.
And so I totally agree with your point, but I guess this is the point that I would make to you is like I think most referees aren't good. Like, I don't want to see this.
I don't know about that.
I don't want to see the special, not because they aren't good. I think the job's impossible. I think when you look at an NFL or an NBA game and like, these are the fastest, strongest, quickest people, and you're asking like, most of them are above ordinary, but they're ordinary citizens that are being asked to referee these games. You're just not going to be able to see and do and keep up, and it's impossible.
Basketball is impossible. I think football is more doable, but I get your point.
So the point is, like, if a restaurant's bad, I don't want to see Fernando in the back mixing up the sauce before I'm about to eat it. And so that's how I feel about refereeing. Like, I think refereeing for the most part is impossible to do. And I don't want to see the cluster of what they're doing back there trying to decide what should happen. Because I think most of the time it is a cluster. I think most of the time they truly are not 100% sure. I really believe that.
Oh, and I agree with that too.
Yeah. So I don't want to see it.
But on the replay, when you have 17 angles, there was a game, and I can't remember which one, because I watched several games this weekend, both on Saturday and Sunday. Because I had a really productive weekend of sitting on my butt and watching football. But there was one that was as clear. It was either first down or touchdown. I can't get the game. But everyone, I mean everyone, the people in the booth, the rules, him, and they're like, the call stands. And it was so bad that they were almost silent. Mm-hmm. And I also think that there's a kind of unwritten agreement that, the league is paying you a whole bunch of money. Do not blast the officials too much.
Yes.
100%. Now ESPN kind of was all over the guys for the third down. And
the one thing, and because you could do this in football and in basketball, I don't understand why the head ref is on the field or on the court. There should almost be like a producer ref who is mic'd up in the guy's ear, and he has the TVs, and he's got 2 or 3 guys beneath him, and should just be kind of letting them know, like, hey, just so you know, like, that out of bounds call was wrong. Not even to overturn it, but just to let him know, like, hey, you were right or wrong. Just so you know. Because the biggest issue that you have right now is a lot of these referees don't know. Like, they have no clue that they're actually incorrect or if they were right. Because you're going to go both ways. A coach is going to complain at you, and he's going to look to the coach, and he's like, the guys up in the booth just told me I nailed it. End of discussion. Now he's not worried about what the coach is doing. You're not going to get the reverse call on the other end because he's trying to make up for the fact. And vice versa. If he got it wrong, he's going to say to the coach, like, hey, this is what we got wrong, and this is why. And it's a lot easier to explain to a coach why you got it wrong. The problem for most of these refs is they don't know why they got it wrong. They just know they got it wrong.
Right. Or they might not, because there have been times that coaches go crazy and the coaches are wrong.
Sure.
And so you're like.
So you can't fix it at like the lower levels, but at the top levels, there should be a producer ref that is just in the ear of the ref on the field. And he's just almost like a news person or a TV show or a game show, like, and they're in the ear and they're just letting them know, here's what we got next. Here's what this was. Here's what that was. And just walking them through the game. It makes no sense that they're just left out to dry in the middle of the field.
Well, I've said this about high school basketball. The third referee should be sitting in midcourt halfway up the bleachers, because being a stationary.
I see what you're saying.
You're stationary and you're above. So nobody is blocking you mostly. Sure. And there are lots of times that you're sitting in the crowd and you're like, wow, they missed that. I mean, you just see it.
It's an impossible job.
And that's what it is. Because there's the constant movement. And even if you're in position, there's always people in your way. But if you're in the bleachers And again, you're stable, so you're not moving, you're not worried about, and you get to see over things. You can certainly, I think the game would be better officiated with 2 on the court and 1 in the crowd. Now you get to an NBA arena, and you know the guy way up there, you know that's a little, but
they have all the TVs. Like they don't even need to be close. Like as long as they have the screens and they can see it, they're better off that way.
The other thing that's crazy, and we talked about this, and this is just sports, but now we'll go to life, of where common sense has just, there's sometimes common sense doesn't get a chance to prevail. When this is such a big game, I mean, this is arguably, well, Florida and Alabama was a big one. There are 2 huge games in college football. This is one of them. You've got the coach going ape poop, going, it's only 3rd down, it's only 3rd down. Like, there has to be a sense of reason to like, hey, let's stop it. Let's get everybody together. And while we're huddling, we're telling the guy up in the booth, run through the last couple plays and tell us what down it is, so we don't screw it up.
Right.
Because the SEC, by the way, the SEC blew a punt in the Memphis floor. When you Google SEC officials, and they are apologizing for other games other than the Penn State game. Also, why don't they have an ACC crew do this game? When you have, I heard next year there'll be a Big Ten crew. If you have a Big Ten school and an SEC school, get an ACC crew to do the game. How I don't understand this, but the SEC had a rough weekend outside of Penn State. But on something like this that is so countable, and it's not, was forward progress stopped? Was he juggling? All you got to do is go back and count the plays and just be like, hey, we're going to stall here long enough. You guys in the booth go through and see what freaking down it is so we don't get this wrong. Where does that come out?
Yeah, because I don't even think he should have to ask. I think there should already be somebody in his ear, like letting him know. Like we're just to the point now where these like big college football games and professional athletes and games, like we can do that. Like we can have somebody in their ear and just kind of walking them through and just like, hey, just so you know, it's actually 3rd, but the guy's got 4th on the, someone should already be, and listen, it's not a lack of money. There is money. You walk through State College last Saturday. There is money falling from the sky when you walk around there. So I don't know.
Is that why you went?
What's that?
Because there was money falling from the sky.
No,
how did you do? Did you catch some?
I'll give a selfless plug. I ended up at a brewery in Bellefonte for the game called Axeman, AXEMANN, and it was incredibly nice. Really, really nice. So just on the outskirts of State College, you don't have to go all the way into town because obviously it can be chaotic during a Penn State weekend. But you're right on the edge of it. You get to watch the game. It's an old industrial facility that they turned into a brewery. Really, really neat.
I think I might have been there once.
You might have. Another selfless plug. Have you been to Baldbirds in Jersey Shore yet?
No.
That is unbelievable.
I heard it's neat.
It is really, really cool. And nothing against our area, but you walk in and you almost, personally, I was like, I cannot believe this is here.
I've heard it's good.
Yeah, really, really good. Anything else on referees?
No, but it is impossible.
It is. No,
with some of them, like baseball, there are some really, really good baseball umpires. Baseball is a doable game. I think soccer is a doable game.
Baseball is different though because it's stationary enough
and it's spread out.
Yes.
You don't have bodies in your way.
But if you're an umpire, you're not trying to. Your version of keeping up with the greatest athletes in baseball is more reaction.
You just stand there and wait for him to get to you.
It's the eye and it's reaction and it's. I mean, some of the soccer and the football and the basketball and stuff like that, it is, I mean, the idea that someone is going to keep up with these people is insane. Soccer, to me, I don't understand how they still only have the referee in the middle of the field for soccer. I feel like soccer should have 6 referees. Like
don't they have multiple? Because hockey used to have one, now they have 2.
As you go higher and higher up, like they put one on each side of the field.
Okay.
But like, I mean, even that's still like when you think about how quickly the ball can be moved up the field and how everyone's moving, I just don't understand how they do it with that limited amount of whistle power, if that's what you want to call it.
See, I think.
Have you been? When's the last time you went to a high school soccer game?
I saw a half of a soccer game this year.
Most of the soccer games that I've gone to in high school had one actual official in the middle of the field. Now, granted,
I thought maybe the one I was at had just one official on each side.
Okay, because granted, I'm from the northern tier, and like I've seen like some lower end, like as far like they're just not enough officials to send so many to every game.
I think high school soccer is a sport that might do well with an official sitting in the crowd.
Well,
because
probably
you can see, the pushes and that might be like basketball except a little bigger. But yeah. I will say I think. Especially when you watch on TV, I think most of the officials are shockingly good. When they throw a hold and you're like, oh, why did they call hold? And then you watch and you're like, yeah.
Well, what's funny is if you go to a high school football game and if you look up in the booths, like up top above the stands, you'll see the visiting team on one side, you'll see the home team on the other side. And in the middle where they do the clock and everything, that's where the referees are being evaluated. So the irony is like, in order to evaluate a ref, you don't go down onto the field where you can you evaluate the ref from up above. So I think the point that you are making is very poignant.
You can see stuff.
Yes.
And I think, this comes from refereeing basketball at basketball practice. When you're stationary and when you're used to it, like I could umpire first base from the dugout better than I could from the field. Because I've seen bang plays at first base from the dugout 10,000 times. But standing right by, because when you're the first base umpire in like real baseball, you don't see the ball coming. Once the shortstop fields it, now you're looking like it's on its way, but you can't time the travel of it.
The irony, too, is you're actually, I would argue, 50% of the bag that you're staring at doesn't matter in the play. If you get what I'm saying.
Right.
If you think of the first base as having four sides, typically the ump can only see two sides of it. They can see the back of it and they can see
the infield side.
And the back of the bag doesn't matter.
Right.
The front of the bag.
Well, they're listening. That's why you hear these guys that if you're sitting in the dugout and you can see the whole thing in front of you, you can kind of anticipate. If you're standing behind first base and you're listening for the ball and you're listening, it's weird. It's really odd. And
we just said why it's odd. Half of what you're staring at doesn't matter. There's 50% of the first base bag matters on a first play.
And the other thing you'll learn about officials, on the closest play in the world, whichever team the call went against, it was obvious. We got screwed. It was obvious. They were out by a mile. They were safe by a mile. It was a foul. It was a travel.
That's a baseball thing.
And I'm just like, because I've told people before, whatever it wasn't by a mile. Like maybe he was out, maybe he was safe, but it was bang, and you really have no idea.
No, it's a really hard job to do. Anything else before we head out? Word of advice, wisdom.
You need wisdom.
I didn't say I did.
Wisdom. I just asked you get to this time of year. I've always felt this, especially in the fall, and there's football 5 nights a week.
Yep.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So you get this Tuesday, Wednesday, where it's kind of like I get to, it's baseball scoreboard following, which is so much fun. And the Phillies had a huge win last night, 2 outs in the 10th with a double. But like if you're going to watch a movie, it's kind of like Tuesday or Wednesday. So last night I popped in Venom because there's a new Venom coming out.
Okay.
I never heard of the old Venom until there was a new Venom. And then I thought I should catch up. And I should preface this by saying this is not my genre.
Okay.
The comic book, all this stuff, I really thought it was fun.
Okay.
I fully endorse the original Venom. I know nothing about I didn't know anything about it. Didn't know it existed.
Yeah.
I endorse it.
So you like Deadpool and you like Venom.
Iron Man.
And Iron Man. I mean, the correlation there is they're all, pardon my language, they're all assholes.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
Who?
All 3 of them.
That's not true.
Compared to the average Marvel superhero DC comic person, yes, that's very true.
I disagree with that wholeheartedly.
Deadpool,
I thought very likable.
Deadpool, Venom, and Iron Man, all the one correlation they have is that they all have there's an arrogance and there's a comedic value to that arrogance, and that correlates all of them.
I thought he came off. I thought he came off as very human.
You can't link Captain America into that.
Well, it's because Captain America.
You can't link Spider-Man into that. You can't go through. Tell me another one that fits into that group, and those are your 3 favorite. That's all I'm saying. There's a correlation there to the ones you like versus the ones you dislike.
Well, don't get me wrong. The original Superman with Christopher Reeves and Lex Luthor played by Gene Hackman. I mean, those are timeless. Miss Tessmacher. I mean, that is. But
those are almost different genres. They almost don't qualify for this.
So you're going to tell me during Suicide Squad, they're all nice?
In Suicide Squad?
Yeah.
I wouldn't compare any of the movies you just said to Suicide Squad.
But the characters.
But it's not an individual superhero story.
Okay.
And
I see that.
And Suicide Squad's not awful, but it has mishandled as being cruel. But that collection of superheroes is not being.
I can't believe you would describe Deadpool in that way.
Is this a joke?
No.
This is
why? Why is he a bad guy?
Deadpool?
Yeah.
It's not so much that he's a bad guy. It's the idea there's that arrogance, there's a sarcasm to him. There's just a very it's not righteousness, but there's a pompousness to him that comes along with the character. You don't think so?
I mean, I think he's sarcastic. I think he's funny.
Right.
I think he knows he's sarcastic. I think he knows he's funny. I don't think that makes him.
Yes, and there's a raunchiness to him. And listen, I don't dislike it.
Why is that bad? Where's the badness of this?
This isn't about it being bad. This is about the correlation of it. You need the superhero to be a little raunchy, a little sarcastic, and to have a little bit of a bite to him. That's all I'm saying.
If life doesn't have a little raunchiness and a little sarcasm and a little bite, it's pretty freaking boring.
There you go. And that's why you like those superhero movies. The other ones you struggle with. It's not a coincidence that those are the 3 you like. That's all I'm saying.
And Miss Tessmacher. I like that one. I like the original Superman.
Superman?
I like Black Panther fine. I don't think it was the greatest movie ever.
You don't like it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're helping my point. I don't know why you're disagreeing.
I don't know. I feel like you insulted my friends.
I don't know. I don't think I did. I think I just gave an honest answer about the comic book movies that you like. Thank you guys for watching.
Well, let's just clarify. You love Deadpool.
I listen. All 3 movies that you just said, I really enjoyed, except Venom. I haven't seen it yet.
No, all right.
I'm gonna have to do a double feature for Venom.
I think you owe these people an apology.
Who is these people?
The characters, who are much more likable than you insulted them.
I think they're incredibly likable and entertaining, but it's for reasons that they're not likable because they're.
Sure. Well, why not? They're likable because they're funny. They're likable because they're human. They're likable because they're off color.
They're likable because their flaws come off as comedic and come off as their flaws are very accessible in the sense of if you're going to be flawed, you might as well be funny. And so that is
amen.
And that is significantly more entertaining than your flaw being depressing or your flaw being miserable. Captain America's flaw is that he's old and he can't go back in time. That's depressing.
Captain America's flaw is that he throws a shield. I mean, really, is this?
We'll bring on Brett. Brett can decide this for us. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Thank you to all of our sponsors, and be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all your local news. And we will be back tomorrow. You didn't mention, by the way, I thought you would say something about the Rhino I put up for you. You don't like the Rhino above your head?
I do.
And then I put the Frisk above your head, too.
I saw that,
you didn't
too.
say anything about the Frisk above your head.
That was
also, I'm going to keep the, because we didn't bring this up the other day, I'm keeping the Emmy. Do you see it up there? There's an Emmy up there. I'm keeping it because we were not nominated. And
until we're nominated,
until we're nominated, we're going to leave it up there as if that's our fireplace mantle above us. And we are going to keep that Emmy up there until we are recognized.
I like the cheaters always win.
It's a book. Have you ever read it? You can read it.
Is that why Loyal Sock won in basketball last year?
No, the cover is actually. See how good I am?
You just kind of blow that off.
See how good I am at ignoring your nonsense?
You're just like, no.
One of the cover, because it kind of goes through. It's more of a history book than anything else. It goes through in history times that people cheated and won out, whether it's the original oil industry. They talk about like the first Thanksgiving. Like they go through all these times where like people lied or cheated or scammed.
When we bought Manhattan from the Native Americans for $22.
Correct. Yep. It's an interesting for history book. It's really, really interesting. All right.
Okay.
Go enjoy your midday, hump day. Go enjoy your Wednesday. And we will be back tomorrow. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. Thanks for watching the Midday Show.